All right, let's get going. Thank you everyone for joining us today. We are going to be talking about Sourcegraph 316, the release that went out just yesterday. So that's very, very exciting. I have a few engineers on the call here. I think a few more will be joining us. Right now we've got Eric on the line, but we're expecting Torsten and Loic to join as well. I think they're just going to be a few minutes late. So to kick it off, I'm Christina. I'm the product manager of Sourcegraph, and I'm really excited to share what we've got in this release with you. So please, we'd love this to be an interactive conversation. We're happy to hear from you and chat with you along the way. Feel free to use the Zoom chat or raise hand feature to let us know if you have any questions. And we'd love to make this more of a discussion rather than a lecture. So looking forward to hearing your thoughts. So great. Starting out with this release, we have version contexts. So this is a new experimental feature that we've created and is included in 316. And we're really excited to continue to work on this. So the goal of this functionality is to help developers be able to search over older versions of their code. So what that means is, at lots of organizations, you deploy software and maybe you have customers that are running your software and they're running old versions of that software, and for whatever reason they're unable to upgrade and they're experiencing bugs or issues within the code, and you need to go investigate those old versions of code. And so you want to check out at an older revision, you want to look at another branch, and so we are introducing a new way of creating a context inside of Sourcegraph that allows you to say, I want to go search across this old revision. So for old versions of our code, we're able to see what's going on there. And so how this works is there's this new flag that or this new drop-down field that shows up right at once you have configured a context, and that context can then be included. So this is an example of the Sourcegraph code for our very old version 3.0, we can perform a search, or we can change into version 3.15. And this is different than our normal experience with Sourcegraph, where we are searching across all of the master branches for the repositories that are configured. So this is a new feature. One of the optimizations that we're working on adding in is the ability to index these non-master branches. So we're expecting really big performance boosts coming soon in the next 317 release. And the way you configure this is inside the experimental features block in your site configuration, you add a version context list. And so these are set up, they require a name, and then you specify tuples of the repository that it's associated with and the revision at that repository. And as I mentioned, a revision can either be a commit SHA, it can be a branch name, it can be a tag. So you can configure that as needed. I know that Torsten's coming soon, so I'm actually going to skip over campaigns and let him talk about that once he joins. So for syntax highlighting, this is a really cool, exciting feature. And the reason that this ended up sneaking into the release is because we have been working really hard on campaigns. And one of the key features of campaigns, as a reminder, are find and replace across all of your code. So it's large scale code change across all of your repositories. And we help automate that, allow you to monitor and track this. So an important piece of campaigns is the ability to see your diffs that are being applied as a result of the script that was run across all of your code. And so we invested in improving diff views. And so this is an example of that. You can see it in both light mode and dark mode. To jump into a real example, we can jump over here and see that in the diff view, you can see the files that were changed, but you can also notice that there is quite nice syntax highlighting across all of these files. And so we're really excited to introduce that. On top of just having better syntax highlighting on diff views, we updated our syntax highlighting library. And so that means that there's 6 new languages that are now supported. Smarty, Ethereum, Viper, CUDA, COBOL, VB.NET, and ASP.NET. So lots more types of languages supported there. Let me see who we've got on the call. Where's my participants list? Do I have Loic or Torsten on yet? It doesn't. Oh, looks like Torsten just joined. There he is. Can we get him unmuted to talk a little bit about campaigns?
Sure. Did you already say something?
I knew you were joining a bit late, so I skipped over it. I talked about version context and syntax highlighting, and how important syntax highlighting is a great improvement for campaigns because of the diff views. Cool. But maybe you can dive a little bit more into campaigns and what they are. I'm happy to click around if that's helpful too.
Cool. Yeah, so campaigns is Sourcecraft's code change management tool, which is a bunch of words to say you can change a lot of code in a lot of repositories in a single tool. And in this iteration, I didn't do a lot of coding. I spent a lot of time on a video explaining what campaigns are, which is what we've just seen in the blog post. But what we see now is a list of campaigns that we run on our own dog food instance. And each of these campaigns represents one change in multiple repositories. And these campaigns have multiple change sets, which correspond to pull requests on code hosts. So this one here, for example, is a collection of change sets. What was the title of this campaign? I think it was, oh yeah.
Long-term manual.
Basically a campaign that I set up here to track the progress of multiple pull requests over a long period of time. And as you can see here, one pull request apparently took 4 months to get merged or something. So now they're all merged and or closed. And this is one use case to just open up a campaign and track a bunch of different pull requests on different code hosts. And right now we support Bitbucket Server, we support GitHub, and you can collect them all in one campaign and have like an overview at first glance and see how far along they are. And to give you an example use case, we have larger customers that want to keep track of large changes in multiple projects. For example, migrating from Python 2 to Python 3, or migrating from one test framework to another. And there are not a lot of tools to track this. The most common one is Excel, I think, or Google Sheets. So this here is already a big step up because it has a single UI that gives you like a chart, and you can actually see the CI status. Is CI passing? You can see the merge status. You can see exactly the review status. In the future, you will also be able to see comments and what happened on these change sets. And of course, if they're still open, you can see the diff. And yeah, this campaign was, yeah, this is the second type of campaign where you don't collect change sets that already exist, but instead you create them using Sourcecraft Campaigns. So here, Eric, who built the front end that you're looking at, he ran go mod tidy, a command that cleans up dependencies in Go projects over what did he write? Every project in our Sourcegraph GitHub organization, if it has a go.mod file, and then the resulting diff, he turned into pull requests and opened them up, as you can see in our open repositories here. And 7 pull requests were opened up. 2 are still open. 1 is awaiting review, and 1 is approved.
Mhm.
So
Awesome.
I don't know why it's unmerged.
We know we have an action item to go follow up on.
Yeah.
Awesome. So one of the things that we improved with campaigns was configuring the webhooks. Can you talk a little bit about why having our webhooks configured is a good thing to do?
Yeah. So as you saw in the previous screens, we replicate a lot of information that is already on the code hosts. That means we need to get this information. That means we need to talk to the code host. Since we want to have this information as up-to-date as possible, if the pull requests are still open, we need to send requests to the code host. Ideally, not a lot of requests, because we don't want to put a lot of load on them. And webhooks allow us to turn this around and have the coders tell us when there is new information, which we then incorporate in our syncing mechanism to back off and say, okay, the coders just gave us information. We don't need to ask the coders in the next 10 minutes or something. So we build up a little heuristic in the background that, you know, allows us to reduce the load on coders if you have the webhooks set up.
Mm-hmm. And do you want to talk a little about the documentation improvements that you've made?
Yeah. The docs are, what you're looking at is, I think, a complete overhaul in this last iteration. I started working on this at the beginning of last iteration. So now we have like this welcome page where you can see what campaigns are, how they work, when you should use them, all of this first-time user information. And then we have a getting started guide, and then we have like a step-by-step guide to how you use the Sourcegraph CLI tool, the source CLI, to modify code in multiple repositories. We have example campaigns, and all of the information, how you set up your Sourcegraph instance to get started. And yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I think those examples are really helpful in understanding the different kinds of ideas that we can use to run campaigns. Thanks, Torsten. And then I guess just as a quick reminder, campaigns are in beta right now. They're free for everyone to use, so take advantage of that moment. Otherwise, once they come out of beta, they are going to be a paid feature. So at this point in time, we're really excited to hear the different kinds of changes that people are able to make and run. We talked a little bit about syntax highlighting already. That back and forth, maybe we should rethink that GIF. It's a little bit flashy. Loic, I see you've joined us. Would you like to introduce yourself and start talking about the smart search bar?
Sure thing. So, hey everyone, I'm Loic. I'm software engineering manager with the web team at Sourcegraph. So we build, among other things, the experience of the Sourcegraph web app and how you actually build kind of search queries in the Sourcegraph web applications. So one thing that's shipping in 3.16 that we're pretty excited about is it is now much easier to kind of read queries as you type them in the Sourcegraph search bar, but also understand what they do and understand mistakes that you might be making as you write them, because the editing experience is now much richer. So previously, the Sourcegraph search bar was just a simple kind of plain text file, didn't have any bells and whistles. Now, as you type filters in the Sourcegraph search bar, so one example here is the repo filter, which is mistype. There's syntax highlighted, but they're also validated. So you'll get the red squiggles under invalid filters, have a message that tells you that your filter type is invalid. Then once it's fixed, if you hover over that filter again, will actually tell you what it does. So this is useful in examples where a colleague shares a Sourcegraph search query with you, and you don't necessarily know about Sourcegraph filters to start with, or you might not know all of them. You kind of hover your way around to figure out what the query is actually doing. Some of our filters don't take just kind kind of pattern options. They take discrete options. So for those, we actually also validate the options that the filter takes. You can take pattern type maybe and mistype a pattern type or something like that, or case. So yeah, for case, if we type an invalid case, we'll show you that, and we'll kind of restrict those to only valid options. And another thing that we also do is we'll show other warnings. So for example, a common kind of mistake that users make when writing search queries is if you're searching literal search, which means that your pattern is not interpreted as a regex pattern. When you type quotes, they're actually interpreted literally by default. You're actually searching for the quotes, and that's not always evident to users. So now we warn users about that when they type a search query in the search field. So those are a few examples of what we do there. In a sense, it's kind of bringing the experience of editing search queries closer to that of editing code, which makes sense because the Sourcegraph search language is a language. So why shouldn't it feel like like you're editing code in your editor with syntax highlighting, hover tooltips, diagnostics, all of that stuff. So yeah, we're pretty excited about that.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Loic. That's a great overview. I know we're iterating on this and getting this just right for a few months now, so it's really exciting to see it land in production. I think people are going to really enjoy that. By the way, Loic actually created this great video included in the blog post, so definitely go watch that. And as Torsten mentioned above, he made this awesome campaigns video. Our team has done a great job talking about their features and sharing that with all of you. Eric, do you want to talk a little bit about the performance improvements that we've been making for precise code intelligence?
Yeah, I'm Eric. I'm one of the engineers on the Code Intel team. For the past about 10 months that we've been supporting this feature of Precise Code Intel, which is powered by pre-computed indices from your source code. The backend has been written in TypeScript. That's just really due to a lot of technical decisions when the product first started being kind of built out to define market fit. And we've recently started to come up against the limits of what TypeScript can do on the back end. So I spent the last iteration rewriting the entire thing in Go, which is not so easy to do. 10 months of work in 1 month in a different language. But at least we got to.
But you did it.
But we did it. We found all the bugs in the past 10 months, so we didn't have to redo the entire thing, which is very nice. This, without doing any major re-architecture or it was basically a mechanical rewrite from one language to another, and that did yield already about 19% of an improvement in the query latencies for Precise Code Intel. And that's not so much, but it does enable us to do all of the giant brainstorm list items that we've been doing to actually increase performance. We're going to look at better on-disk strategies for storing data like LevelDB, Bolt Badger instead of SQLite. We get to actually roll services into one another without having to have separate Node.js processes in your deployments. So I hope that this announcement is the first of many over the coming months.
Awesome. And then just in case there's people here that are new to Sourcegraph, can you talk a little bit about the difference between precise code intelligence and our search-based code intelligence?
Yes, search-based code intelligence. So both of these provide the data that comes over hover tooltips. So it's going to be things that come up on the tooltip for documentation. Also, it powers jump to definition and find references across multiple repositories. So the one you're seeing right now is precise, and that's because the Sourcegraph repo pre-computes a bunch of precise code intel data, ships it to Sourcegraph for processing, and then we use that data in an internal format to answer these queries. Non-precise search-based code intel. So if you don't do this extra step in your CI or build process to actually provide us this data, we fall back to a heuristic-based code intelligence, which uses search under the hood. So it is very fast, but it is sometimes imprecise. It will just find similar looking tokens, but not actually find the actual definition for certain symbols.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the great things about the search-based code intelligence is that it just works because we have search. And so we can provide code intelligence for pretty good results for pretty much every language that there is. And so that's one of the niceties of Sourcegraph is you just get this code intelligence out of the box. And if you're looking for a higher level of precision, you should talk to our team and we can help you get set up with that. We have a question from Torsten. When is the why we migrated from TypeScript to Go blog post coming?
I'll start working on it today.
Are you serious? Like, I would be super interested.
Yeah, I have plans to write one.
Cool. And just a follow-up question, you said 90% faster, right? Do you think that is really due to the language? Because you said it's a line-by-line rewrite, or did you do any like small data structure optimizations or something along the way?
No, everything, it was meant to be a behavioral symmetric rewrite so that we could find any issues between the two. Doing improvements while rewriting it would probably be disastrous.
Cool. That's interesting. So 90% is actually just like Node.js versus Go, but then. Cool.
Yeah, super neat. And then, yeah, thanks for asking questions, Torsten. Reminder to everyone else who has maybe joined a little bit later, we would love to hear from you. We want to make this a discussion, so feel free to just add your questions in chat or use the raise hand feature and we can let you join us in the conversation. Great. So moving on, the next one is the repo group autocompletion. Loic, do you want to talk about this one too?
Sure. This will be a quick one. So repo groups are a useful feature of Sourcegraph to kind of create groups of repositories that represent, for example, all of your backend repos or all of your front-end repos or all external dependencies that you've kind of pinned in fork repositories in your organization. And they allow you to narrow down the scope of your searches. Now, when you use repo groups in a query, it's helpful to know which repo groups are available on the instance. And unfortunately, that wasn't available from the search field. That wasn't possible from the search field until 3.16. When you type repo group, you had no autocompletion on those filter values. We fixed that. So now as you search with repo groups, you'll get a list of all repo groups available in your instance. And you can discover them much better and go ahead and use them to narrow down your search queries.
Yeah. Awesome, thank you. Yeah, this is really interesting and helpful, especially even browsing Sourcecraftcom. You can see that there are a lot of really interesting groups that we've created to help make first-time searches interesting or let people search within, you know, the Angular set of repositories. So lots of cool stuff here, and exciting to make that more visible and available. Great. So this next one is a continuation of the permissions updates that I've been talking about for the last two releases. In 3, I have to do some math, 3.14, yep, 3.14, we introduced Bitbucket and GitLab permission seeking, and then we also added that in for GitHub in 3.15. This is the final kind of phase of this effort where you can now see when your repository permissions have been synced. And so this is for both repositories and for users. And if you need, as an administrator on a Sourcegraph instance, if you need to manually trigger a permission sync, you can go do that from either a repository settings page or the user settings page. So it gives you a little bit more control over the last time things were refreshed, as well as the improved background syncing that's happening. It also provides a bit more insight into when the last time this particular user was synced and when they're scheduled to be synced again. So yeah, that's a very nice UI improvement that Joe added in for us this time. Understanding our activity of our instance. Eric, do you want to talk about this one? Eric Brody-Moore, who's also on the call. if we can get him unmuted. I'm going to put him on the spot. See if I can unmute him. Whoop. I think you're good. Eric. All right, I'll just talk about it.
He's just pretending to be here.
Yeah.
That's all right. So what this is about is we've gotten a lot of requests from administrators who want to better understand how their Sourcegraph instance is being used. And we also, as Sourcegraph, want to better understand this information as well. So we made a first step in this direction by creating a button inside of the admin area of Sourcegraph that allows you to download your monthly activity. And so what this does is it just creates an export of a CSV. If you send it our way, we can create one of these really nice activity histograms. We're planning on adding that chart directly into your Sourcegraph instance in the next few iterations. But in the meantime, we're happy to help you with that to get more insight into how frequently people are using your instance. So in this case, the chart that we're looking at shows of the number of days in the month, what percentage of users came back one of those days up to 21 of those days. And so this is sometimes called the power user curve. And what you see is you see the nice smile shape, and that lets you know that you have people who are using it all the time, and then you have the normal distribution of people who just come and try it out one time or do one search. This is common in many applications. So we're really excited to see the results from this and start to get some data back. So if you're an administrator of an instance, we'd love to chat with you. Again, we have a very strong policy of our ping philosophy. You can go take a look at that. We make sure that any data that we collect from your Sourcegraph instance is anonymized and aggregated and doesn't contain any information about your repositories or your code or anything like that. So we have a high bar here that we uphold. And so this is follows within that as well. Last but not least, we've made some improvements to basic code intelligence. We also talked about this in terms of search-based code intelligence. We're working through disambiguating the confusing different names. But the search-based code intelligence was broken for a few languages for a couple releases. And this is because of how our symbol indexer was working, and it didn't quite know how to extract the right symbols for these particular languages. So we got that fixed, it's up and running. So if you were experiencing some weird code intelligence issues, you should definitely go for these particular languages, you should go check it out and see if that has resolved those issues. And on top of that, we added some more languages. So we now also support COBOL and TCL. So adding more to our already, I think, over 30 languages that we support with Sourcegraph. Basic code intelligence just straight out of the box. That's our whole release. We got through it in about 30 minutes. We would love to chat with you and answer any questions that you have about the release, about Sourcegraph, about the product, about our implementation decisions. So yeah, would love to hear from you. We have a question from Quinn. How are you helping companies with legacy code? That's a great question. So companies with legacy code, this is something that we're directly addressing with version context. In general, just using Sourcegraph is an amazing opportunity to have better insight into how your code works. So what Sourcegraph enables is searching across all of your code, across all of your code hosts. Lots of companies I know have legacy code in legacy code hosts, and that means code search is really hard, and finding access to the different code that's available is really hard. And so bringing all of that into one place enables you to be able to find what you're looking for in legacy code. It allows you to traverse that code and read and understand that code in a better way. And then as we talked about at the start of the call, version contexts allow you to say, hey, I actually care about some of these older revisions, and these older revisions are actually quite important to us, and we want to be able to search over this. So that's another way in which we're supporting legacy code. Yeah, thanks for your question, Quinn. All right, well, if we don't have any other questions, I'm happy to give you all your time back. Thank you for taking this journey through the release with us. It's been great. Thank you to Eric, Torsten, and Loic for joining the call and participating in the discussion with me.
Thank you.
Awesome. Have a great day, everyone.
Bye-bye.